setup don't seem to work. So I started a new streaming. I hope people can find us. It doesn't show me go live option. It doesn't show me go live option. So previously it did. I don't know. Some things with YouTube. It's to page 3. Homage to Him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the Fully Enlightened One. Homage to Him, the Worthy One, the Fully Enlightened One. Homage to Him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the Fully Enlightened One. Homage to Him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the Fully Enlightened One. I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dhamma, I take refuge in the Sangha. For the second time, I take refuge in the Buddha. For the second time, I take refuge in the Dhamma. For the second time, I take refuge in the Sangha. For the third time, I take refuge in the Buddha. For the third time, I take refuge in the Dhamma. For the third time, I take refuge in the Sangha. I undertake the precept to abstain from harming living beings. I undertake the precept to abstain from taking what is not given. I undertake the precept to abstain from sexual misconduct. I undertake the precept to abstain from false speech. I undertake the precept to abstain from intoxicating drinks and drugs that lead to heedlessness. So the sutra is printed, and you can have your own copy. This is number 43 from Majjhima Nikaya, the middle length discourses. We did number 44, the smaller version of this, smaller or shorter series of questions and answers. And now we are doing the greater series of questions and answers. I think it's greater also because two great monks were in conversation in this sutra. This is called the Mahāvedalla Sutta. It has some profound questions and profound answers in it. So the two monks are Sāriputta and venerable Koṭṭhita. So I had to print something about them so you know who they are. So I will speak about Koṭṭhita first. Koṭṭhita is one of the foremost disciples of the Buddha, ranked foremost among masters of logical analysis, Patisambhida, and he was born into a very wealthy Brahmin family in Savatthi, his father being Asalayana and his mother Chandavati. He gained great proficiency in Vedas, and after hearing the Buddha preaching to his father, according to an account in Apadana, one of the texts in Khuddaka Nikaya. So Koṭṭhita entered the order, he became a monk and engaged in meditation and soon became an arahant. He was extremely skilled in knowledge of the logical analysis on which and these logical analyses were based on his thinking and his own questions to the Buddha and to his colleagues. So in this discussion we find his colleague Sāriputta responding, or Sāriputta asking questions and Koṭṭhita responding, I think. Let me find that out. So Sāriputta is responding, Koṭṭhita is asking questions. So this logical monk is asking questions here. So in the time of, like now this goes to the time of a previous Buddha named Padumuttara. And at that time he was a rich householder, and he heard the Buddha Padumuttara giving a talk, And in that talk, the Buddha Padumuttara praised a monk, um, saying that that monk is the foremost among those skilled in the logical analysis, and this monk wanted to be um, one like that in the present Buddha's time. So he aspired to become um, um, the one who is foremost in logical thinking in the present Buddha's time, the Gautama Buddha. So I think that's enough about him, and there are different discourses ascribed to him, and you can just find about him if you want. There is plenty of information online. And about Sāriputta, briefly about him, he is one of the two chief disciples of the Buddha. He is also called Upatissa, which was evidently his personal name. And the commentators say that Upatissa was the name of his village, and that he was the eldest son of the chief family in that village. But other accounts give his village as Nalaka, a name of another place. His father was the Brahmin Vangana, I think Vanganta or Vanganatha, and his mother Rupasari, Vangis, I don't know what name the father had. It was because of his mother's name that he came to be called Sāriputta, the son of Sari, because the mother was Rupasari. In Sanskrit text, his name occurs as Sāriputta or Sāliputra or Sāriputta, and another name is Sāradvati Putra. So different names. But so in many past lives, he had met different Buddhas, and his close friend, the other great disciple Moggallana, and they both aspired to become great disciples, the two chief disciples of the Gautama Buddha, or the Buddha to be in one of those previous lives. So in an assembly of monks and nuns, Sāriputta was declared by the Buddha as the foremost among those who possessed wisdom. So that means there were many monks who had wisdom, but Sāriputta was the foremost among those monks. And then the Buddha considered him as only inferior to the Buddha in wisdom. So this means he was only second to the Buddha in terms of his wisdom. And it is to him that the Buddha taught profound teachings, Abhidhamma. Once the Buddha descended from heaven, the teachings the Buddha gave in heaven were taught to Sāriputta, or just these were given to Sāriputta as teachings, and then it became the canon of profound teachings, or the Abhidhamma Pitaka. So the original author of Abhidhamma is the Buddha, but then people ascribe to Sāriputta, Venerable Sāriputta, as the one who started a canon, or continued compiling teachings of the Buddha, or his own teachings, or profound teachings of analyzing things, and then compiled them into Abhidhamma, the basket of profound teachings, deep dhammas in simple terms. So that's enough about Koṭṭhita and Sāriputta. We can go to the discourse now. Thus have I heard, this is Venerable Ananda saying again, this is what he heard, this is not how he thinks about it, this is what he heard of it. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. Then, when it was evening, the Venerable Koṭṭhita rose from meditation, went to the Venerable Sāriputta, and exchanged greetings with him. When this courteous and amiable talk was finished, he sat down at one side and said to Venerable Sāriputta. So these are questions about wisdom. One who is wise is said. With reference to what is this said? One who is wise. One does not wisely understand, friend. That is why it is said, one who is unwise. So the question is like, there is this wise person. Someone says a wise, someone who is not a foolish, a wise person. Why is it said he is a wise person? Is because he understands wisely, not lacking details. He understands with wisdom. You will get more clarifications over this with the next question Koṭṭhita is asking. What doesn't one wisely understand? One does not wisely understand this is suffering. One does not wisely understand this is the origin of suffering. One does not wisely understand this is the cessation of suffering. One does not wisely understand this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. Whose phone is that?
It's muted. It's
Vibrating. One does not wisely understand, friend. That is why it is said, one who is unwise. Saying, good friend, I know you get this, right? Someone who is wise is the one who is understanding dukkha, suffering, origin of dukkha, that is dukkha samudaya, and the cessation, nirodha, and the path to cessation, dukkha nirodha gamini patipada. So that person is called a wise person, and that is what one is supposed to understand. So these are, like I said earlier, not that profound. Someone who is like beginning to understand Buddhism may come to know these things by asking questions like, how do I become a Buddhist? You become a Buddhist by taking 3 refuges and 5 precepts or whatever, but then how do you become a wise person in Buddhism? So you understand the 4 noble truths. In that understanding, you are gaining some wisdom and you are becoming a wise person. So I would consider you all as people who are becoming wise. Just the knowledge doesn't help. You need to see it in your own practice. That's why I use the term becoming instead of directly saying you are already wise, because I don't have a way to measure my own wisdom or anyone else's wisdom. It's only by listening to others or reading or by directly practicing and seeing things, we become wise. But you may never say that you are the wise person, because there are people who understand these things even more subtly than how you have understood. So let's continue. Saying, good friend, the Venerable Koṭṭhita delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sāriputta's words. Then he asked him a further question. One who is wise is said, friend. So earlier it was about one who is unwise. Did I read it wrong? Okay. So one who is unwise is how he asked the question. So, and then one who is unwise is the one who does not understand. So we are coming to know one who is wise is, that is my previous explanation, one wisely understands, so number 3 again. One who is wise is said, friend, with reference to what is this said, one who is wise. One wisely understands, friend. That is why it is said, one who is wise. And then the counter question comes. What does one wisely understand? One wisely understands this is suffering. One wisely understands this is the origin of suffering. What is the origin of suffering? Craving. Yeah. One wisely understands this is the cessation of suffering. One wisely understands this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. One wisely understands, friend. That is why it is said, one who is wise. These birds are talking too much today. Consciousness. So questions about consciousness. Consciousness is said, friend, with reference to what is consciousness said. So why the word consciousness is there? It cognizes, friend. That is why consciousness is said. What does it cognize? It cognizes this is pleasant, it cognizes this is painful, it cognizes this is neither painful nor pleasant. It cognizes, friend. That is why consciousness is said. What's the Pali term for consciousness? Vijnana. Vijnana. Yeah, vijnana is the Pali term for it. V-I-N-N with the wave sign above and long A with an asterisk, not asterisk, the bar, the line above, and N-A at the end. Vijnana. Birds stop when I stop talking. They think I'm chanting. So the next question is somewhat, I don't know if I should use the word arbitrary here or somewhat an odd question, not a typical question that an ordinary person would ask. Because the question is this: wisdom and consciousness, friend, are these states conjoined or disjoined? So he's asking simply about wisdom and consciousness. Like this lead one to assume that there are people who think that wisdom and consciousness are the same thing, or there are people who think they are different things. So let us see what answer he gets. The question continues, and is it possible to separate each of these states from the other in order to describe the difference between them? So can we separate wisdom from consciousness? So you can describe the difference in that separation? And Sāriputta responds, wisdom and consciousness, friend, these states are conjoined, not disjoined. And it is impossible to separate each of these states from the other in order to describe the difference between them. For what one wisely understands, that one cognizes. And what one cognizes, that one wisely understands. That is why these states are conjoined, not disjoined. So he is connecting not just understanding, but wisely understanding. That is what connects with wisdom. That wisely understanding and becoming conscious on what you understand wisely are conjoined. And it is impossible to separate each of these states from the other in order to describe the difference between them. So when someone is wisely understanding something, you are already conscious on it to become aware of it. So wisdom that way connects with consciousness, because you can become conscious on the thing that gives you wisdom. So then the counter question is interesting, right? What is the difference, friend, between wisdom and consciousness? These states that are conjoined, not disjoint. The difference, friend, between wisdom and consciousness, these states that are conjoined, not disjoint, is this. Wisdom is to be developed, consciousness is to be fully understood. There is no developing of consciousness, but in wisdom there is development that is needed for you to cultivate wisdom so that you continue journeying toward the final cessation. Doesn't just come by one wisdom, it needs more wisdom, more than just one wisdom. You can be wise about one thing, but you may ignore a whole lot of other things. And when you are lacking knowledge or awareness or wisdom in those things, you are not progressing to the final state of nirvana. Any questions so far? Or many questions? It's hard to know why, he asked these questions, like what's the purpose, like is he testing the knowledge of Venerable Sāriputta?
Vijnana and prajna, right? So,
Vijnana and prajna, right. It's good to think about the Pali terms here. Wisdom, the Pali term for wisdom is panya or prajna. Prajna is more like the Sinhala and the Sanskrit terms. And vijnana is consciousness. We can stop here for a bit if you want to. And this monk, as you can already see, is thinking about these terms analytically. And for someone, they may think this is unnecessary to think about these things. But for someone who is analytical, these are important things. They just spend time thinking about these things and gaining some clarity over these things. I think, yeah?
So vijnana means that you fully understand the present moment.
Awareness and vijnana can be the same thing, because you become aware of something, which means you become conscious on something. But then there is a word like attention. You pay attention. What's the Pali word for that? I think aramana. So there is something that you focus your attention on, like meditation aramana or kammatthana. These are very much connected, and determination is aditthana. That's, I think there are some thoughts gathered before you make a determination. As if you are aspiring to become something or achieve a certain goal. But in simple terms, awareness, becoming aware of something. Like when there is eye consciousness, you are looking at something and you are aware of it. But you can be looking at something and not aware of it, but be listening to something. In that case, you are not really aware of what your eyes are looking at. You are aware of what your ears are doing or listening.
And so I was just looking up the definition of cognizes. So it's, I like the awareness, so it's like aware but without interpretation then?
Yeah, interpretation.
And adding, you're not layering thought on it, it's just,
You just catch it.
the contact with the eye.
Right.
The eye, okay.
So,
At least you know you are doing it and you know what you are looking at.
So looking at a flower.
Yeah, that's it. Labeled and you know it.
So the awareness and the consciousness here is, I think, awareness is just awareness, right? That
Yeah.
fully consciousness is something to do with present moment or your path to the nirvana or something like that.
Not necessarily. Like fully conscious on something and fully aware of something. I think to me they sound very similar. Do you want to add anything to this? The way you are phrasing this is about, I think this leads to a discussion about meditation, how you really cultivate your mind and you become aware of something and then you become fully conscious on something. So these states are a little different. Just being aware is different from becoming fully conscious on something. Because you are now aware, but with full attention to it, you are actually starting to see details of something. And that's also an advanced state of, moving away from cognizing, but again, maybe analyzing it, or just seeing it in clarity, but not having too much thoughts about it.
So the awareness of the real truth, or is conscious no vijnana?
Awareness, not necessarily. You can be aware of non-truths as well.
Yeah, but here, vijnana means?
Here, vijnana has to be just taken literally as consciousness. And I think your question is, like, what is consciousness, right?
Yeah.
And I can certainly say that it's not just the mind, because mind has mind consciousness.
Yeah.
And similarly, ear has ear consciousness. And other faculties, eye, nose, and all these have their own consciousnesses. You become conscious on something. So consciousness that way arises and passes away. It's not a permanent thing. Are you going to?
Are you saying that the ear and the eye has self-consciousness, self-awareness?
I don't think that's what I was trying to say. I was just looking, I was not trying to put, no. The ear and all the organs function not just because there is a view of a self who operates in this process, right? And they are not self-conscious on their own. They need to have a mind and a view of a person who is cognizing. If they are just let be there without a person, they are not going to do anything. They don't manifest.
So they're not living.
They're not living on their own.
Yeah.
Then you have to treat them as different beings,
Okay.
doing different things.
It's true, yeah. Yeah, makes sense.
I said in a thing that in a either talk or something that because they separate because the eye cannot conscious about the sound because they
Right.
separate. Yeah. So eye does the seeing thing, the ear does the hearing, all the other senses. So they
Right.
have their own job.
Yes. And when the eye is seeing, the ear is inactive. And the ear, as soon as the ear becomes inactive, eye becomes. As soon as the ear becomes active, eye becomes inactive. Momentarily, I would say. Not that they are inactive or they are shut down, but these all help each other to continue giving the sense to you that you are alive. No part of you is dead. I'm sure you are having multiple questions in your head, but take your time. So vijnana, what vijnana does is becoming aware of something, right? And then having thoughts and having proliferated thoughts, and that's, I think, secondary, like the steps that come after. And I don't find a way to separate awareness from it. You just, to become aware of something, you need to be conscious on it, right? And clear awareness and mindfulness can be very similar things. But mindfulness has a wisdom aspect of it. Can we move on?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Feeling is said, friend, with reference to what is feeling said. So these are different questions from number 44 we discussed. I think they are, the questions were like, what is pleasant feeling, or how many number of feelings are there? Those were the questions in that discourse. But here, like it's asking about what the meaning of the term feeling, with reference to what is feeling said. It feels, friend, that is why feeling is said. What does it feel? It feels pleasure, it feels pain, it feels neither pain nor pleasure. It feels, friend, that is why feeling is said. Feeling is Vedana. It is different from the Sinhala term Vedanava. Vedanava means painful. In Pali, Vedana is something that you feel, like Vindima in Sinhala is the translation for this term. So you can, Vindina, you can feel Sukha, Dukkha, or Dukkhama Sukha feelings. Pleasant, painful, nor neither painful nor pleasant feelings, like neutral feelings, the ones we were discussing earlier. And I'm again thinking, like, why this question, right? Why did he have to ask it? Maybe he's just setting up the stage for a deeper question later on. Perception, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sanya. Perception is said, or sanya is said, friend. What is with reference to what is it said? It perceives, friend. That is why perception is said. What does it perceive? It perceives blue, it perceives yellow, it perceives red, and it perceives white. So sanya, what it does is, different sanyas, blue sanyas or blue perceptions, white perceptions, red and yellow, all these are perceptions, like you perceive a certain shape or a color. Or a name, or a person, or an identity, or something that you perceive. That is what it does. This perceiving is called perception, sanya.
That's kind of like that next layer on top of consciousness. And, as I gave the example of seeing
A flower,
but not really, I guess that's even, you don't even label that as a flower, that would be perception then?
That, to me, is a perception. To name it,
Right.
get a shape of it, so immediately say this looks like a flower. There are things that look like flowers but not exactly flowers, but you still get the perception that this is a flower. And coming to the color of it, it's not secondary, but then it's another perception. You may see the color first and then come to know that this is a flower that you saw. Like you're looking at it from a distance and you see just a round shaped thing, but you saw blueness from afar, and then you came to know that it is a flower once you walked to it. So different perceptions, perceptions after perceptions. Number 9. Feeling, perception and consciousness, friend. Are these states conjoined or disjoined? And is it possible to separate each of these states from the others in order to describe the difference between them? Now, feeling, perception and consciousness. Feeling is Vedana, perception is Sanya, consciousness is Vijnana. And these are called, in number 44, we found these are called Chitta Sankara, mental formations. But we had consciousness out from the other two, like it was just feeling and perception as mental formations, right? Consciousness was not there. But just imagine logically, when feelings are no longer in your periphery and perceptions are not available, so you have nothing to be conscious of. That way consciousness ceases. Or in the most subtle sense, you disappear. The entity of a person is no longer, going to continue in that state. That's how you come to know that, oh, there was a continuity earlier. Now there is no such continuity and it ceased. And then you emerge from it, reflect on it, and you saw, oh, this is how the continuity of a self disappeared. And now you are convinced that by cultivating your mind to those subtle states, that there is a disappearance of everything. And that means there was no such a thing called self that was permanently abiding in you. That's the thing that was challenged in your wisdom, and you are no longer believing someone's saying of a self existing in you, because now you saw it yourself that it discontinued or ceased to exist. This is what is called nirodha, cessation, ceasing. So for final nirodha, this is very much conducive. So final nirodha comes when you don't have, or final cessation comes when you don't have any attachment, no craving, no ignorance. You are free from all the bondages. There's nothing whatsoever that binds you, that keeps you engaged in any sphere, any kind of existence, any realm, any loka in Buddhist sense. There is such freedom to be free from all these states and almost become non-existent. You no longer continue with the view of a self, and when you die, you're not going to exist in any form attached into this or that heavenly realm or hell realm or any place. You have given up karma, you have given up merits, you have given up demerit, like evil ones. You don't find any meaning of any of it. And such person is not accumulating sankharas or formations. Why? Because this person no longer finds any meaning in accumulating any sankharas, any formations. Whether it's merits or demerits, there is no value. An arahant is not making merits. It may be doing meritorious things, but not with an intention to continue a good life after his passing away. It may be helping people, the arahant may be helping and giving talks, but he or she does not have the wish to accumulate merits or punya to fuel his next birth or continued existence. So that is, I think, a little too far to go, but that gives a question like, why are we doing all these things finally? But that's what happens to any person who gets to that stage. Like, you don't find any meaning accumulating merits, or not disengaging from evil acts, but simply a person does definitely disengage with demerits because you don't want to cause any harm to any person. But with the intention that you are avoiding those, not to have a pleasant life after, you're just avoiding because you don't find any meaning. Carrying a baggage of it with you. So arahant's karma is akarma, no karma. Arahants have just kriya chittas, which means the thoughts that are not going to produce results, but only actions, just the kriyas, actions, but not, actions in mind, but not going to produce any results from it. But then, once you have become an arahant, previous karma, although you have put all karmas down, previous karmas can come and beat you. Like what happened to Moggallana. He escaped karma a couple of times from his wisdom. He could see a danger was coming toward him. But at last he gave up escaping. He just surrendered. So the bandits came and hacked him to death, I think, in modern terms, right? He was living in that cave and they killed him. Finally they caught him and killed him. I think they wanted to occupy the cave, but this is connected with the previous karma he did. He killed his parents, I think. His wife in a previous life didn't want to live with the in-laws in the house. She found many ways to convince him to tie them to a cart and drive to a deep forest, telling them that they are being taken to, I think, on a picnic or something, but then abandon them. This is what comes to my mind, but he did something like that, and this karma came after him. And he had to endure such pain, almost similar to the pain those parents went through in many lifetimes, and also in his last lifetime. And he died from it. And even the Buddha had a back pain, and I think some 10 karmas the Buddha endured. Like one time he went for rains retreat, invited by this Brahmin, and he forgot about his invitation. The Buddha had to eat just the food that was given to horses. I think just chickpea the whole 3 months. You know, chickpea, the kind of bean. In India, they feed that to horses, and that is connected to a previous karma. And Ananda, I think, was telling the Buddha, we can escape this place. All these monks can go to a different town and just have a comfortable life. The Buddha said, no, let's live here and go through this. Because he knew that escaping karma was not the answer. It's going to come back. But some karmas, you know, karma doesn't work like a, what's the term for it? Like a niyati. This is the Pali term. Karma is not a fixed thing. It may become neutral, and some karmas may not come after you from the good things you do, or good places you are going to live, and good conditioning in your life. Some karmas may become neutral, but there are grave karmas, like big ones, like killing Buddhas, killing your parents, and these can blind you and may cause you to rot in hell and never understand Dharma or any teaching for many lifetimes. So these karmas should be avoided. Even killing an arahant, an awakened monk, and disputing sangha, disputing monks, like you tell this monk that this is what that other monk said. Usually it's hard for monks to be, monks may not believe what you are saying about other monks, but causing schism is a different way to say it. Devadatta did it. He taught slightly different teachings from what the Buddha taught, and caused some monks to separate from the Buddha and went on their own ways. But then he started regretting this decision later, and he could not understand the teachings of the Buddha. He went down to hell. Just before he wanted to visit the Buddha, but halfway through he couldn't make it.
So by going down to hell, you meant he's an angry ghost?
Kind of. I think angry ghost is a different realm. Angry. I think he's still in a regretting place in his mind, and he can't get over it. It's slightly different from being angry.
Yeah.
Like soldiers, I heard, when they are trying to catch a wall, if they died at that moment, in their mind they were still trying to catch the wall. So they are dead, but they are in their mind caught in that state. So if someone who has clairvoyance is able to see these beings trying to catch the wall in their mind, or they are caught up in that thought, that's a hell that you don't want to engage with anything else but catching the wall. Such dangerous is living in samsara. So these things are taught to arouse wisdom and energy, virya, effort for people to meditate and come out of these dark spots. I think it's nice to go into these discussions rather than we trying to finish the entire discourse in one breath. So we cover up practical things, not just the theoretical stuff. And like we agreed earlier, we are not going to finish the whole thing today. We are able to continue next time and then next time until we finish it. We can go a little more. So in the answer, feeling, perception and consciousness, friend, these states are conjoined, not disjoined. and it is impossible to separate each of these states from the others in order to describe the difference between them. For what one feels, that one perceives, and what one perceives, that one cognizes. So whenever you have a Vedana, you have a Sanya of it. See, Sanya connects with Vedana. And when you have a Sanya, you also have consciousness of it. You are conscious on what you had Sanya, perception on. That is why these states are conjoined, not disjoined. And it is impossible to separate each of these states from the others in order to describe the difference between them. You got it? That is why these states are conjoined, not disjoined, and it is impossible to separate each of these states from the others. So you are not going to separate them because they are not separable. When you have perception, when you have sanya, that means vijnana is all right there. Let me say it in a different way. You look at something, you look at the flower, and you saw it as the flower, which means sanya came as the flower and your consciousness landed in there right at that moment. So being conscious on it and knowing it is the flower, and this perception that this is the flower, all these are happening simultaneously. One cannot exist without the other.
But the feeling and the consciousness, but cognition will be different, right? Person to person. Like we all might see the same thing, but you cognizes it differently.
Different people does it differently, that is very true. Commonly they all have a person who feels.
Yeah.
So there are commonalities that way, but different people experience the world. So certainly different people experience the world differently. There was something else that came to my mind with your question. The feeling aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Say we have three feelings, right?
Yeah.
Pleasant,
Unpleasant and neutral.
unpleasant and neutral. And again, without discussion, the neutral feeling, someone may easily ignore that because you are neutral. And when you really become aware of the neutral feeling, something that is not pleasant, something that is not painful but neutral, say equanimity. Give me an example for neither painful nor pleasant feeling.
It's like air.
Like air,
Like
that is not pleasant air, or painful air. That is, yeah. Yeah, you can say something, air that you can say whether it's painful or pleasant. So let's take that. So who is experienced in that?
person.
There is a person, right? So when you ask that question, you immediately come to know that you can't ignore that feeling, or you can't ignore the view of a person. Just taking pleasant feeling and painful feeling into your account and ignoring the neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Because someone may go to neither painful nor pleasant feeling saying that that's my refuge, I'm going to stay in neutral feelings and completely abandon pleasant and unpleasant feelings. And that's a fake refuge. That's not going to help. because you go to take refuge in it, because you take it as a thing and as a permanent thing or as a shelter, when in reality there is no such thing exist under the view of non-self teachings. There's no self experiencing it. Anatta.
Yeah. Instead of the if you say breath, it's easy to clarify, right? Breath, it's
Right, with breath is the same thing. You may feel neutral about it. And but knowing it, you don't need to know every neutral feeling, but just knowing the nature of it. That there is a thing called neutral feelings, and this neutral feeling is there as long as there is there is ignorance, because you accept it as a thing. But when you come to true knowledge, it is a thing certainly, but it does not exist in a self, in a non-self person's world, because you are not taking it as a personal thing. It has come and it has disappeared. You are seeing a nature that is arising and passing away, devoid of a self, devoid of a permanent self. When you have the knowledge of it, you have seen it and that's it, and there is no need to hold on to it for lifetimes. Seen it enough, move on. Even for that, conventionally you need to accept that there is a thing called neutral feeling, and in absolute truth that even does not exist. Does that help? Yeah. So, do you want to continue or shall we stop there? I think what do you think?
Just take that.
Hmm?
Doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
Just take that, yeah.
We can stop there, right? We can then digest about these things and then come back and discuss later. So we will do number 10 next week. That is part 2. And continue on from there. Alright, we will finish with the last gatha on page 6. Sabba pāpassa akaranam kusalassa upasampada sacitta pariyodapanam etam buddhana sasanam. The avoiding of evil, the doing of good, the purification of the mind, this is the Buddha's teaching. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you for coming. Happy awakening.
Mhm.